Hello, my name is Fianna, and in this presentation, we're going to be going over the Layout LOP and Layout Asset Gallery, both of which are new in Houdini 19. And even though we're going to be working in LOPs and using USD data, I would still say that this presentation is for people who don't necessarily care about the maximum power of USD. They have some assets, they want to make a scene, they want to paint those assets in the scene, they want to use Karma, and they want to get a render out as quickly and as easily as possible without any considerations for all the things that are around USD. So if you're in that category, then I invite you to stay and check out this presentation. But if you want to know more about all the details about USD and what the new things we did in Houdini 19 for USD and the tools around it, then I highly recommend you to check out the Solaris workshop presentations that my colleagues have done. And there you'll find much more in-depth information covering that. So with that, let's begin. So what is this presentation going to go over? We're going to look at how to get hero assets into LOPs. We're going to look at how to convert existing assets into paintable objects so that we can paint them in our scene, and we're going to make a scene. What this presentation isn't going to be about is it's not going to be a step-by-step tutorial kind of video. It's an overview to give you a picture of the processes involved in making a scene with the layout tools, and just to show you whether or not, it's something that you want to consider using for your environment building. So some considerations to, keep in mind. For this demo scene, I'm just going to be, not that demo scene, I'm just going to be going over the stuff that I did that I used to make the scene. I didn't use other file formats than what you see in green, so TIFF, BGOs, and FBXs, but Houdini can ingest a variety of file formats. So OBJ, Alembic, for example, you shouldn't have any issues to work with those file formats either. And then the other two very important pieces of information that you must keep in mind is that the Layout Asset Gallery only uses USD assets. If you try to import an FBX, for example, into the Layout Asset Gallery straight, it's not going to work. Nothing's going to happen. And then hand in hand, this will only work in LOPs. So you're thinking, okay, I can live with those two things, but I don't have any USD assets. How am I going to make my scene? Well, don't worry. In Houdini 19, there's the component builder. It's a wrapper of nodes that will allow you to easily bring in external files or files that you've already imported into Houdini, into the object context, for example. They may or may not have materials assigned to them, so you can import it from there or create new ones here, and you can bundle it together, write out the necessary USD files that are required by the Layout Asset Gallery, and very easily just export that, set of files that is required. So next I want to highlight the nodes that I used to make the scene, this Lost City scene. It's not anything crazy complicated. It's just these nodes plus edit LOP, lights, and camera, but I didn't include those because these are nodes that you're already going to be familiar with coming from regular Houdini. So these LOP specific nodes are the ones that I wanted to highlight, and in particular the new additions are the scene import and the layout LOP. Everything else has been there since Houdini 18. Now, I want to share with you my hardware specifications just because I think it's important to have a realistic idea of performance versus expectations, and your configuration is a big part of that. So depending on what is your configuration, your mileage may vary. Now, we're going to start by looking at the first layer of building the scene. And this is by no means the only way to do it. It's just the way that I approached this scene and how I thought it made sense to make it. So it may or may not work for you, but I highly recommend you to experiment. So I started with loading the hero assets into my scene, and by hero assets, I mean these are kind of like the signature items in my environment that I know I'm gonna just position them once, and I'm not gonna be painting these on top of things. I'm gonna be painting things on top of them. So these are, in this case, the Lost City of Ruins, and I want to do a big shout out to Jama and the guys at Big Medium Small for very graciously lending their collection to allow us to make this example to show you guys the new layout tools in Houdini. I chose to use the Lost City, but if you go to their website, bigmediumsmall.com, you can find a variety of theme packs. They will include different structures, different characters, props, vehicles, animals, you name it. So if you want to build an environment quickly and with very nice, rich assets, then I highly recommend that you guys check them out. So big, medium, small, thanks. So how do we bring these assets into Houdini? Well, I just did that normally by going to File, Import, FBX, and then you find your file, hit import, and it comes into Houdini. So here, let's look at this arc. If you've imported FBXs before into Houdini, this is not anything new. If you go inside the material network, you'll find a variety of shaders with their texture assignments. And the only thing that I do want to point out is that sometimes you may get your texture imported into the metalness imported into reflectivity, and that's because the importer is making some sort of informed decision about like the different metal and specular models, and it doesn't know which one. So you can just grab that link and paste it into the metal channel, and you're good to go. And if you're smarter than me, then probably you can write some script to automate that, but I just did it the peasant way. So if we go back up and look at the geometry import, it's just a file SOP, nothing special. And I would say if you want to make any sort of scale adjustments, because that's pretty important in this in general, you should make it here in the object context before bringing it into LOPs. And what I did was I just made a little man and just scaled the things accordingly, because you can have files from anywhere that were made for some specific project, and they're all having different scales. So it's important to just kind of standardize everything and get it all as ready as possible before bringing them into LOPs. So we can hit the N key and jump to LOPs, but I'm in my build desktop, so I'm going to switch to Solaris. And the reason for switching to the Solaris desktop is that it has all the necessary window panes that you would care about for LOPs. So it's just more convenient. Anyway, so you can see that the arc FBX has been imported into my LOPs context. And if I zoom in, I used a scene import. If I look at a default scene import, you just type scene import, right? So this one is not having anything, but if we look at the scene, the arc import, we're just pointing it to the FBX that we imported earlier in the object context. And the only thing different from the default scene import is that we pointed it to our materials. And this one doesn't point to anything because obviously it's blank. But that's pretty much it. You can see that the geometry and textures are loaded and everything's good to go. So I brought all my other buildings in like that, and vehicles. Also the ground floor, which is a mixture. It's actually 2 geotiffs that I grabbed from open something. I can't remember the name right now, but yeah, I'm lazy and I didn't want to sculpt anything realistic. So I just grabbed some satellite images as TIFFs and then made them into HIVE fields and brought them in. So I mentioned some nodes earlier that I used in making the scene. And that was the scene import. These height fields we're using the SOP import and your standard merge, and then you can see that each one in black, except this one. There we go. They each have an insertion point. And what's an insertion point? Well, it's basically a bookmark for Houdini and USD to know that it should jump to that spot, and any kind of edits that you do will be forced into that position. So it's actually a way to keep your scene organized so that you're not ending up with a bunch of edit nodes down wherever your node is currently. So if we, for example, try to move this truck, our current insertion point is already set to vehicle, but you'll probably have it set to no insertion point. But if we try to move it, you can see, boop, there's an edit LOP that just gets created. And if you're moving a bunch of things, then you may end up with a string of edit LOPs, and then you don't remember who did what. So that can become pretty terrible to find out later on. But if we move that to vehicles, then any of the edits will be done up above. And I already have an edit LOP in there, so any of those changes is written to that and not somewhere down here where I don't even know what this has to do with anything. So that is the insertion point, and then this one is the graph stage where I'm using it as a way to organize my scene. So basically everything I'm building on top of the terrain is getting plugged into the second input, and my ground terrain stuff is on the first layer. So you don't have to use this, but it's just something that I did. So now that we have our hero assets in our scene, we are ready to prepare our assets that we want to paint with and convert them into, working paintable assets. So in this case, I worked with Mochitaba Oriui. He is the author of the Grow Infinite Mega Tool. It's a toolkit of 37 HDAs, and it can grow a lot of things. In this case, I worked with Mochitaba to create vegetation and some ground cover. So here is a collection of some of those items. We have some sticks and more rocks than what you see, some grasses, bush, a bunch of mixed vegetation for this environment. So when you have those assets, and these are assets that are going to be downloadable, by the way, you can write them out from a HIVE file. In this case, I had them as a HIVE file because this is a Houdini tool, and we wrote them out as BGOs with their respective shader assignments or color ramps. And let's take a look at what that actually looks like. So here is that HIVE file with one of the palm trees, and if we go inside, you can see that it's just importing the BGOs, and then we're merging them together. We're transforming it, maybe scaling it. There's the material assignments and cleaning up some attributes that we don't need. And then a final transform, which I cannot stress enough. You really want to make sure that any asset that you write out is at the origin, because if you don't, you might want to throw your computer out the window and yourself with it. If you've written out a bunch of them and then you find out that they're all 2 meters offset. Yeah. So just to keep yourself happy, you want to make sure that everything is at the origin. And you can even turn on the origin nomen to make sure, have a peace of mind that it's okay, that's at the right spot. When I paint it, it's going to be on the dot of where the brush is. So then we just have a null where we're writing it out. And then once you've prepped all of your different assets to be ready, we are in object. So now we can go to LOPs. And here I have already a component builder, but just to show you, if we put down a component builder, it's one item on the tab menu, but if you put it down, it's a collection of nodes. So they're wrapped together to let you prep your assets, whether it is an internal asset. So if you double click to go inside, you can use a file swap. You can use an object merge to grab stuff that you've already pulled in your object context. So you can do all of that. And if we look at the one that I use for the palm trees, so I use the object merge. I'm just pointing to that. And then here I have it going to two places, not the third because I'm not doing any sims with it. But I have the version that is the full resolution version, and that is 1.2 million something faces, which is, you know, if you're painting just like a few, that's totally fine. But if you want to have a forest of them all, then probably you want to optimize it and create some proxy geo for representing that in your scene. And here I just did the VDB from polygons, converted it, shrunk it down some more. And then this too, really important. I want to emphasize that you want to put a divide and a normal SOP. Again, I'm going to have this file available for download, so you can just plug in your assets and just reuse this if you want. The rest of the stuff, the coloring, like that's just for visuals. You don't even have to color that if you're just keeping the scene to yourself and you know what's what. So this is just for aesthetics, and then it's going out to a proxy. And then if we look at the material library, you can point to the existing one, which in this case I did, because they came with materials. They came with the principal shader assignments, but you can also go inside and create your own and assign it there. So it depends on how you want to organize your scene, really. Component builder, here is where you are assigning the specific shader to the specific components of the geometry. And then at the end, you are writing it out in the component output. So you just put your name there, palm tall, and it will just grab that name and put it into this section, and you don't have to worry about naming anything. If we just move this down a bit, you can see we have the thumbnail options. So you can automate this process, but I wanted to have specific angles of each of my assets. So here you can use the view thumbnail camera to just decide, you know, how to frame it. And then you just hit generate thumbnail. If you want to keep the resolution that as a 512, you can change it to however you want. And then once you're done that, then you just click save to disk, and all the files that are going to be written out is everything that you need in the layout as a gallery. So let's load the layout as a gallery window. And, you know, I have all my assets already loaded, but we can just make a dummy one just to show you guys the process. So you click on the teddy bear, yes, and you give it a name. So I'm just going to name it Palm, and I'm going to just use that folder that I was looking at. So you can see that it just shows the one USD file. So you don't have to make any decision about which one do I use. No, just accept. And then the thumbnail is the same thing. So then you just hit OK, and there you go. You got your palm tree. But I already have them here. So next. So yeah, we've clicked on the teddy bear a few times, and we have all our assets loaded. So now it's just a matter of putting down a layout LOP to start using our assets. So in this scene, we're going back to the scene where I have all my hero assets. If I put down a layout LOP, so nothing is here. You just get like a bunch of icons for your brushes. And then we actually, so this Houdini session didn't have it loaded, but you can make this pane, the layout as a gallery pane, inside here. And if you want to save that, you just go to desktop, save current desktop, so you don't have to make it every time. But yeah, like you just grab your assets that you want to use and you throw them into this. It's kind of like a working set. So think of it like a basket of all the stuff that you want to paint with. And you just select the thing that you want. So you can see that I'm painting the tree somewhere. And if I want to scale it, so I just click and drag and I can orient it as well. If I want to paint all three of these, so I don't have to go back each time to select each asset, I can just use the middle mouse scroll wheel. So after you've painted your, let's say, your palm trees, and you want to do rocks, you probably want to keep them as separate layout LOPs. So in my case, I painted each set of assets in layers so that I can easily go in and edit them afterwards and know, these are only rocks and the next one is sticks. So if I need to update some assets later, I just go into that layer and update that. And so you can do that as many times as you need. And then you end up with your full scene. So that is the layout as a gallery with the layout LOP. Now, right, we want to know what our scene looks like, right? Like the whole time we're looking at GL. So if we go back to our scene, if you want to switch to Karma, you just click on that button and select Karma. Now, the one thing that I will highlight that I'm not sure is easily discoverable is the hotkey Shift R. This allows you to, once you've activated the Karma option, you can just hit Shift R to switch back to GL and Shift R to go back to Karma again, instead of each time clicking on this drop down and choosing. And that pretty much sums up the overview to show you the process involved in making an environment using the Layout LOP and the Layout as a Gallery. If you want to get some of the files that were used in this example, head on over to sidefx.com/content library, and you'll be able to find some of these assets there along with their HIVE file. And of course, you'll need Houdini 19 to run this, so get it at sidefx.com/download. And again, big thanks to Big, Medium, Small, and also Grow Infinite for helping make this demo possible. So thank you very much, and happy cooking. Bye for now.